You're listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast to give your communication skills the clarity edge with your host, Paul Leon.
Hey guys, so we're going to talk about how to use DiSC properly. What does that mean? Well, there's a lot of different personality styles out there, and there's a lot of different models in how to better understand personality styles, whether it's Myers-Briggs, colors, etc. And one of the things I always tell people is if it works for you, what model you're using to help you better communicate, better influence, connect, and elevate your communication skills while lowering conflict, do it. Use that model that best works for you. Like I was doing a training and a person said that there's one on birds and animals, and that's fine. I don't knock and I don't criticize other types of personality training out there. Now, I'm certified in DiSC, which is where I've kind of always just been drawn to in my professional career since I first entered this type of world. And I will tell you this, in my 5+ years of experience, I have seen some changes. And I've also seen some pretty big mistakes that are made in using a personality model to help, whether it's to work better with a coworker, close more sales in your consultations, whatever that is. There are some pretty big mistakes and some pretty big misunderstandings people have when they first use any type of personality system. And for the sake of simplicity in this episode, we're going to stick to DiSC personality styles because it's typically the most easy to understand and a lot of people have familiarity with it, and most models that are coming out now are pretty much always stem or go back to this one. So the first error I see a lot when people first do DiSC personality or attend DiSC personality training is, and this is going to sound a little controversial what I'm going to say, I actually don't believe 100% in the term personality styles. And that might disrupt some people who are certified like myself in DiSC or certified in another type of personality training. Now, don't get me wrong, I do 100% believe it's important that if you're going to be a professional who works with people, whether it's Strengths Quest, DiSC, Myers-Briggs, you should take those trainings. You should attend them. But the biggest mistake a lot of people make is using the word personality. And let me tell you why. If I were to ask you, do you like to be put in a box or told who you are? My assumption is you'd probably say no. And that's probably the biggest error I first see when people take on personality training is they tend to put people in a box. They tend to label people right away. And what happens is when you're trying to use something of that type of knowledge base to do that, you're leaning more toward manipulation. It's not about the other person. And number two, it kind of takes you away from any type of responsibility or action you need to take to better connect with that person. Let me put it to you simply like this. I don't believe in personality styles. I believe in behavior styles. Let me say that again because this is a really important point and a lot of people miss this. I don't believe in personality styles. I believe in behavior styles. Here's the difference. Personality training typically says, well, you're X personality. You have these strengths, you have these weaknesses, and that's just the way it is a lot of the messaging that sometimes comes across when people take those types of training. And the reality is that's just total nonsense. And it stinks, in my opinion. The reality is you're not just one way all the time. It changes based on environment and circumstances. So again, error number one is take away the word personality out of your vernacular. Replace that with behavior styles. Now let's get into error number two. Error number two when it comes to adopting DiSC behavior styles is simply this. I remember I was doing a consultation, and the person who I was working with was B2B type consultation, big sale. And the person's background was they were a librarian, I learned. And my assumption was that they were going to be more calculating, steady, more reserved type behavior style. And I went into that with that assumption. And this is the mistake I had made. I was caught off guard. They were actually more outgoing, they were more direct, they wanted brass tacks. In fact, the data didn't even matter to this person who had 10 plus years as a librarian, which at first blew my mind. But because I had DiSC training in the past, I was able to recognize this change in behavior and adapt. And after 4 follow-up calls, after I got a proposal in their hand, we closed that sale. I don't tell you that to brag by any means necessary. I tell you that to say, if I did not have that DiSC training, if I did not have that ability to read behavior styles quickly and effectively and able to adapt, I would have made a huge error and dissolved that a possibility for a stronger connection. So again, error number two when first learning or even relearning DiSC behavior styles is thinking, I don't really need to change my behavior style, someone else do. It's completely false. The responsibility of the person who takes on this type of training into their lifestyle or career is it's your accountability to adapt your behavior style to meet someone where they're at to improve the connection. It's not them, it's about you at the end of the day to be a stronger professional. Let's get into error number three. I was working with a sales manager who told me, I'm not a big fan of that DISC training. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, my team took it and it created a culture of excuses. My one-on-ones changed where people would say, well, I'm an interactive. I like to live in the present, have fun. Or another one I'd had, Paul, was I'm a steady and I procrastinate a lot and I struggle to meet deadlines. And it just created this culture of excuses. So I wasn't a big fan of it. And I actually emphasize with what that sales manager was coming from. And I want to speak to those who've taken DISC training recently, or maybe you've taken it and you thought it was cool, but kind of let it fall below the wayside for a lot of different reasons. The point of taking that training is it's not your responsibility to look at gaps and accept them. It's our responsibility to identify those gaps, become self-aware, and ask ourselves, well, what can I do to improve or change those gaps? See, just because you're an interactive does not mean you can't be ambitious and meet deadlines. Just because you're a direct behavior style does not mean also you can't emphasize with someone going through a tough time and prioritize humanity in your one-on-ones, consultations, etc. The big mistake, error number three, is allowing yourself to fall into a culture of excuses when first learning about DISC. And here's something else I really want to leave you with. If you're an organization that's actually able to invest in emotional intelligence training, I don't think you should always pick DISC. I think it should be part of it. I think every 90 to 120 days, you should be rotating the content. And that doesn't have to be DISC. That could be Strengths Quest, which is a phenomenal program. And maybe 6 months down the road, 8, etc., whatever your budget allows, then you bring back DISC. You need to be constantly rotating the subject matter around emotional intelligence to level up your customer experiences, level up your consultation experiences with possible opportunities to close sales. Because the more you rotate that every 90, 120 days, this is what you'll start to see. You'll see higher revenue and you'll see lower conflict in the workplace and really have more synergy with your team and keep them strong in place in your organization.
Thank you for listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast. Subscribe to where you listen to podcasts. And if you want to hire Paul to train or speak for your team, visit persistencemastery.com and fill out the request training form.